Welcome to the Warrior Gamer Headquarters podcast. Lieutenant Colonel Ken Crigliano, your co-host. Warrior Gamer Headquarters podcast. Out.
Howdy. My name is Rochelle. and, I'm currently working at Blizzard as a UX researcher, and I am an Air Force veteran. I was a linguist in the Air Force, and it was an awesome, interesting time. I learned so much there. It's funny because when I look back at my life, it's just like this really weird winding path, but I think somehow I've managed to stay true to what excites me. I started out so convinced I was going to work at NASA. I failed out of college the first time trying to do an astrophysics degree, and then I joined the Air Force, became a linguist, thought I was going to do psychology, and now I do UX research for video games. So I like to use my story as a testament to just the mosaic of life and not feeling like you have to be one thing always, but just embrace that we contain multitudes and it's okay to dabble and to be a, what is it called, a jack of all trades.
That's right. The jack of all trades, master of none, some say. I actually heard this one statement before that it's okay to be the jack of all trades, master of none, but it's even better to be the master of being the jack of all trades. See there? So there's nothing wrong with being all around, right? But there are times where we feel like we have to kind of specialize in one thing and be really good at one thing. When did you ever feel that way? And if so, how did that transition to how you think today?
Yeah, totally. So, well, first of all, I wanted to finish the quote. So, jack of all trades, master of none. It actually ends with, but oftentimes it's better than a master of one. So the quote actually supports that it's good to like be spread out. Um, but I would say I was just talking about this earlier at work. Where like the team here, first of all, is one of the best teams that I've worked with. The work environment is so collaborative, and they really see the empathy of it. And that could just be because we're UX researchers. We're all about the empathy and the feelings and understanding people. But we're an amazing team. And we were just talking about this. My cat activated the washer. Sorry about that. Um, growing up, I used to feel I was really tied to my achievements. You know, if I got an A, I felt good about myself, and people like recognize that. And so when you run into rocky roads or things aren't going your way and with work for whatever reason, you're feeling like it's tied directly to who you are and your identity. Um, so I have that mindset that I have to be one thing and I have to be good at that one thing no matter what. But life has a way of just forcing you to learn things. And I've really embraced the fact that you're never going to be a master of one thing. Life is all about learning. It's just continuous learning. So I would say I'm still learning that, but I feel a lot more comfortable with that lesson than I was initially.
Mhm.
And I'm excited by the idea of a life where I can just flit around like an idea fairy and just do the different things I love. I think that's a great way to live.
That's a
love that.
fantastic way to live, and, I'm so thrilled that you're here with us. Well, I was telling you my best friend is in UX. She's at Google now, and I was gonna ask, what is it like being in UX at Blizzard? How do you enjoy that? What's your day look like for if we have listeners who are, interested in that field?
Oh, absolutely. So, first of all, it is it's intimidating because everyone who is here is very smart. They're very competent. Um, everyone was chosen for a reason, and the quality of work that has to be put out, it requires, a very strong skill set from specific people. So I would say this was my first time really feeling intimidated, like, oh my gosh, like, that imposter syndrome, like am I as good as them? Am I meant to be here? But you chose me, so I have to rise to that occasion and go with what I have. So I would say like it can be intense, simply because of the quality of work required. But that just means there's so many more opportunities to learn. And one surprising thing is that almost everyone that I've met here from all levels, they are so willing to just mentor you and to share what they've learned. And they like, especially on the research team and some of the other teams that I've worked with, it's about the collaborative spirit. And it's like, excuse me, everyone can just chip in and we want your input. We want your expertise and we'll help build you up if you have anything that needs support. So it's so cool. So there are dedicated like UX designers and UI artists at the company embedded on their different teams. As a UX researcher, I'm just kind of we have our core group, and then we can support the independent game teams. So I support World of Warcraft specifically, but we have a few others who also support WoW. And it's really just a lot of getting to know all the people on the team and all the different disciplines. It's a super cross-disciplinary setting. You're never just in your little box. So my advice to UX designers, UX researchers is, yes, hone your craft, but also be comfortable with that. Be comfortable with being curious about what your peers are doing in programming or in technical art or in production. Like, just be comfortable with that collaborative kind of thing.
Oof,
Thank you.
there's a lot. There's a lot I want to unravel there. So you're a linguist. Now you're a researcher in user experience. All right. Okay. So this is interesting because we do have a lot of people who are executives and we have students and we have vets who have transitioned. And so I would have not assumed that I love gaming. I want to do something cool. There's a thing such as a researcher in user experience and that you're on like one platform. So can you just like talk about what you've seen out there that regular folks may not know, that irrespective of their background, if they're interested in something cool, look at all of these like jobs and things that they could be doing in career paths. Like that blows my mind. If you could help them, that would be great. And me, that would be great.
Yeah, because I don't know what you got planned. I'd love to learn more about what you have planned for the future. But when I was in your shoes in 2020 in March, I was about to start my terminal leave. And I was supposed to go through TAPS, but it quickly became virtual. And then that quickly became, what am I supposed to be doing? So it was an interesting time. It was a scary time. I had been in the military for 7 years, and this was like what I grew up as an adult doing, and having that ecosystem of, you know, they take you through each step of what you have to do, right? And now I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm on the cusp of doing it myself. So for the longest time, while I was in the military, I did my bachelor's degree in psychology, because something I was always passionate about was helping people. Like way back, I can even find a high school essay I wrote about wanting to be a psychologist. And so I did my bachelor's degree while I was in. So I always recommend pursuing education while you're in and you have the benefits to do that with TA, tuition assistance. And when I got out, I was like, okay, well, I guess I'm just gonna go be a psychologist. So I did at the time SkillBridge it was kind of new, especially at my unit out in Fort Meade. So like nobody knew what the process was. So it was just kind of it was a bit lawless, and also the timing of everything. So I ended up pushing some paperwork through and I got to do an internship at a mental health clinic. And then I was like, yeah, this is going to help me. I'm going to go to get my master's and as a counselor. But something changed in me. Like realized as I'm facing being out of the military, like, I don't know, I like that, but I don't know if that's what I want to do. So I just had this crisis of faith moment where you're kind of re-examining who you are, what your values are, what you want to do with your life. And it ties back to that feeling of, oh my God, I have to have a thing. If I don't have a thing, what am I? Who am I? So I went through this nebulous process, and I just kind of racked and stacked the things that were important to me. And it was like creativity, and helping people. And with creativity, it was really like working on something that allowed me to make art or work on something fun. And um, it's really odd. I just stumbled across UX design. And as I started learning about it, I was like, I've done this. I just didn't know how to name, you know, I've designed things. I've done the research process just in my job as a linguist, but also I was a master resilience trainer. I think each of the branches have their own version of that. It was just, like some resilience training or grit training. So I just really I kind of fell into it. And UX design, I really think for anyone who's interested, it's a really big time for UX design. There's so many courses, so many certifications you can get. The barrier of access to getting into UX is, I would say, one of the lowest it's been in a while. There's so much education out there now that you can learn on your own. And everywhere, every industry uses UX. They absolutely use it. Finance, games, of course, healthcare, automotive, fitness, health and wellness, STEM, everything. So the sky is really the limit with UX. And if you just rely on like your strengths, if you're good at talking with people, if you're good at problem solving, um, if you're great at, getting like pulling out things from people to get their real ask, I recommend just looking into UX and just seeing if that sticks for you. But for me, it was quite by accident. I've always been a gamer though, so I've always known about games, but I didn't know I could do this in games until I did. And then I was like, I want that.
What are
What?
so just quick? Oh, sorry, well, just real quick. What are some of the other cool career fields that you saw that people may not know is in the gaming
Oh,
industry?
yeah, I'm so sorry. I
Yeah,
skipped that.
so no big deal.
So I would say UX design is one that I just didn't know about, and I think a lot of people don't think of. And within UX design, there's UX research, which is one of the more overlooked ones because sometimes it's just lumped into generally UX design. There's also UI artists and UI designers who are really they're actually making that interface. Meanwhile, a UX experience designers kind of working on how a person would interact with that. So the breakdown of the UX, I think, is kind of something that's interesting and not a lot of people know. Other things for video games, well, there's voice acting. If you're interested in acting, there's voice acting that you can get into with games. There's also something that's pretty interesting when you think about the push for diversity and inclusion across all industries, but especially in games, is working in diversity um, for like gaming content. So making like being that coordinator or that single person who's making sure that depictions of like different cultures and ethnicities, it's okay. Coordinating to get consultants in who are from that cultural background or from that religion to come speak to the development teams to teach them about, hey, that's not an okay depiction of my culture. This would be more authentic. And being kind of like that um, diversity check to make sure that what's being put out is authentic to people and not offensive. So that's a really cool one. Um, I don't know what to call that because it can be different names. But I would just say like a diversity coordinator or a diversity um, analyst in games. That's something I've seen come up a few times. That's really cool. Um,
There has to be
And
like historians and cultural advisors and
oh,
stuff,
I
right?
was
I
going to
mean,
say
like,
yes, there are
okay.
lore keepers. So at Blizzard, we have designated lore keepers. So these are people who usually, at least from what I've seen, they kind of support marketing, but they can support all the other teams within a franchise. And it's their job to manage the lore, the database knowledge of a game. Um, so if you had a request like, hey, there was this one place that was mentioned like 5 years ago on this one game, and then there's like a quote somebody references in a book. What is that place? What's the background? This person can help you reconcile that information for continuity purposes. You can find these like little
So
tiny
interesting.
tidbits, you know. Yeah, it's really cool. Um, the other thing is for those who are interested in writing, um, you might be familiar with narrative designer as a title in games, but there's also a quest designer, which has a divergence from narrative design just a little bit more. I've seen a lot more quest designers. And as the name suggests, you're working on quests a lot and the structure of the quests and how that ties into um, some of that gameplay and the programming. So that's a really cross-disciplinary job too, but it's still writing. So yeah.
I think Ken
So
would be a great motion capture artist. He's an elite athlete.
Yes, yeah.
mhm.
And then AI, there's a huge role for AI in gaming right now. The AIs are creating the backgrounds or making roads or doing, I did a whole paper on AI in video games a few years back.
Oh, something else too, accessibility. That's such a big thing now with how big games are, making sure that your games are built with everyone in mind. So you could be like an accessibility consultant, or you could be that person who's implementing these accessibility things on your teams.
These
I'm
are
So
all really
excited
Bilal,
important
about that.
Bilal,
throreads.
do it,
Yeah.
Bilal. There's so much more I want to talk about. This is so
There's a
interesting.
lot I want to talk about, but
There's
we
so
actually
much.
hit on something, a really interesting link just right there where you're talking about accessibility. On our podcast, we actually had Quad Capable come on. He's quadriplegic and he plays video games. And if you look at his YouTube channel, he actually plays World of Warcraft. So, like this is really interesting. And then like
Yeah.
you talked about diversity, and Overwatch is a really great example of this, right? They have characters of all different cultures and backgrounds, different sexualities. Even if you look at the comics, like everything, like down to a T, where how the buildings are designed, the clothes, everything. Like user experience is no joke. It really builds to, I mean, the user experience. You mentioned you played video games. I was curious as to like, what kind of video games did you play growing up, and what do you play now?
Yes. Um, yeah, so growing up, um, for some reason my mom was like, I don't want you guys playing video games. But then she just gave up on that. And so she was actually the one who got us our first PC games. It was Frogger 3D or something like that.
Classic.
And then from there it just grew. I remember RuneScape, playing RuneScape a lot when I was younger. Um, Neopets was also where I got my interest in programming because you had to do HTML, CSS to make your pages all pretty, your little pets. Um, and Skyrim, love Skyrim. To this day, I still play Skyrim, but more recently, I've been playing Halo Infinite. Absolutely love the Halo series and really love Halo Infinite. I'm sad to hear it seems like they're drawing back on pumping in new content into it.
Yeah.
So that makes me sad. But um, Halo Infinite, I'm also playing. So Netflix, you know, they have Netflix games now. They have a lot of cool games there. And I'm playing one called Kentucky Route Zero. It is this kind of eerie, kind of spooky, slightly supernatural interactive fiction. It's essentially a point and click, but it's so well written and it's so atmospheric and cool and creepy. I just absolutely love it.
That's fantastic. I would love to pick up on the diversity point you made earlier. One of the questions someone asked me, and I'm like, oh, great, I can ask Rochelle when she gets here. They asked me what I thought would need to happen for there to be more diversity in the gaming industry, both the collegiate esports and the where you're at you know, jobs and influence and oh, you ready? You got it. I see you.
So ready. I love this. I love this question. So there's many different avenues. There's many different avenues to tackle this. But what I've personally been a part of is um 2 points. So one, it's with getting young people invested in game design. So really inspiring them to not only look at STEM, but specifically game design in that. So I've done when I was working with General Dynamics, they're a corporate partner with Girls Who Code. So that means every summer we get to host a summer summer immersion program for young girls in the area, and we just teach them about different STEM stuff. And I had the opportunity to just lead a UX and game design workshop for them, so that if they never thought of it, now they can think like, hey, I can do this with a STEM degree. And not only for like the games industry that, you know, like Blizzard, but also for the military defense industries, right? There's a lot of investment in things like Unity and VR for military simulation, training, etc. So it can still travel across industries, but so I like investing in community outreach and educational things like that with marginalized genders and identities and getting them interested, like planting the seed, like you don't have to just play them, you could make them. So I love doing that. And I also supported this nonprofit called Gaming Community Co. They do a lot of wonderful work with HBCUs and esports. So during my time with them, we were finalizing the esports lab that got built up at Howard University. And their mission was to just help establish esports labs at HBCUs across the country and to eventually, you know, get something bigger going so that we have these funnels for these talented individuals at these colleges to get into games, not only as players, but to, you know, also plant that seed like, okay, I can start making these games myself from playing them so much. I know how game design works, you know? So I've seen those two ways work. And then I've also seen a change with hiring practices with the industry in general. Which company does this? Was it Bungie? Someone I saw, they had this disclaimer that they would put on their hiring, on their like job openings that was like, you know, historically or statistically, women don't apply to jobs if they don't meet 50% of the qualifications, but we want you to know that you can, blah, blah, blah. I forgot which company did that, but it was such a thoughtful little like change of mind, like change of your perspective to get people to apply. But I've been seeing the community just blooming with just diversity as far as the designers and the developers themselves. And when your hiring practices become more diverse and you're giving opportunities to people who normally wouldn't have that opportunity, like I saw another company, they had a specific job listing only for people who are returning to the workforce after being a caregiver for a long amount of time, right? Like that is so thoughtful. Once you get those diverse people behind the screen, then their stories and just who they are naturally bleeds into what we're producing. So I just firmly believe in working on that back end, reaching out to people when they're young and getting them interested, and then doing what you can on the front end when you're hiring to make sure you're not excluding anybody.
That's fantastic. So you know Johnny Cash and those guys at Community. Awesome. Wonderful. I won't hog
There,
up the time. I could
there
talk
are
to you
so many
forever.
layers here. Like we need our own lore keeper, I think. It's the Warrior Gamer podcast. Like there's got to be somebody. If you
You
know
know,
anybody.
That's
I
how I found out
so
about Warrior Gamer from John Cash and working with Community. He introduced me to Josh through there, and then Josh and I chatted a bit. And so you guys have always been in the back of my mind. So
Wonderful.
Thank you.
so I was on the Simpsons episode once, and someone showed me
what?
like Yeah. I don't tell a lot of people this.
How
It's
do you gonna
ridiculous.
drop that casually?
It's so ridiculous. It's so ridiculous. But because they satired the hell out of me. I mean, my episode on Beastmaster, they did a parody on the Simpsons of
No way.
yeah, like 8 months after it came out. And
Oh my God.
anyway, I saw their lore, but basically the Simpsons is so complex. They have to know who's done what, who's related to what, who's in what episode. It's unbelievable. I mean, you probably went to the base historian at least one time in your career or got a briefing by him or whatever. I mean, it's 50 times bigger than that. And I can only imagine like World of Warcraft or one of these unbelievably complex storytelling experiences must have. I mean, can you imagine like the brain power it would take to keep track of this story? Because gamers are smart. They'd be like, okay, you know what? 10 years ago on this level over here, this doesn't make any sense. And then you're no longer legit, right? I mean, that's got to be like a big responsibility, some kind of system that they do with that, right? I mean, I don't know if you've even seen it, but that's fascinating.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it is a team effort for sure. Knowledge management is very important for anyone who's interested in getting into the games industry. I would say understanding how to manage knowledge, even if it's just your own personal knowledge. Are you using a mind map? Are you using something like a OneNote, or how are you saving stuff? What are files saving, best practices? How do you maintain a database of information? Because that's exactly what it requires. Not only do you have these people who are lore keepers, but you have to have this organization in place to keep all the extra bits that a human brain can't hold in.
Amazing. You know, I wanted to hit on that accessibility thing. You know, Warrior Gamer is a huge component. I mean, it's an artery in our heart, right? So I was out at CES. Have you had opportunity to go out there, Rochelle? Oh my God, you should. I tell everyone, you got to go to this. You got to go. You got to go. Anyway, there's entire sections of each of the convention centers that seem to be oriented around accessibility. And I was blazing. I'd hit these display tables or demo areas, and I'd take a picture. I'd hit the CEO, the COO, the founder, send him to Josh. Just like, man, what are you doing? I'm trying to get work done over here. But like it was serious. They had the one that blew me away was it's lights around the monitor, all 4 squares around the monitor, and it's for deaf gamers. And the lights would light up if there was sound coming from like that side of the game. And they demoed a first person shooter, and their co-founder was deaf, and he was playing this first person shooter and was like, I mean, zipping through, but it maintained that the game had to have stereo, and if it had 5.1 or 7.2, I mean, the power that gamer had, you know, and like a gunshot versus explosion, the colors would change. I mean, like, are you seeing like advocates going, hey, let's do this innovative thing? And, you know, like, can you just break that? Just give us a couple minutes on that. I found it absolutely fascinating and inspiring.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. Someone I really admire in the research field who is a champion for accessibility in our games is actually on my team. And she's like a role model. And she's so amazing because she's that champion. And because of the introduction, because of the acknowledgement of the fact that everyone at some point in their life is going to be, disabled. They're going to experience something that's not that's going to impact how they use something. And one of the examples is like the reason why accessibility affects everyone and why it's important, not only for people who are born with low vision or with blindness, but if you're outside on a super sunny day and you can't see, plain and simple. This is why accessibility shouldn't be like on the back burner, because at some point, everyone in their lives is going to need a way to access things. So we definitely have champions in our research team and beyond. But as a whole, Blizzard has done a lot of really good work in advancing some of their work in accessibility. Diablo, for example, has done a lot. WoW has improved. We've reached out to consult with the Able Gamers, who do a lot of that accessibility training for game devs. And they have like a pool of playtesters that they can provide to any studio who's interested in testing people with disabilities. There's also Mini Cat Studios, I believe, that might be UK based, that does a similar thing where they have a playtesting pool. But absolutely, it's so important. It's so important. And the people that I work with recognize that, and they are champions for that.
What do you think?
Oh, sorry,
No, go ahead. Go ahead.
No,
I was going
please.
to ask you about Elon Musk's announcement yesterday on accessibility, the chip that you can put into some. Did you guys see it? Bilal, you just made a face.
No,
No, yeah, I just made a face. Well, inform me, please. What's going on?
Ken saw it. He made a face again. So there's
All
a
right, well,
chip that he's researching that theoretically would allow gamers or I mean, my thought was gamers, but anyone to be able to control electronics via their brain alone. So if you are quadriplegic, you could play these games via his chips. You can control your prosthetic via this chip. And they said yesterday he finally implanted it in a human for the first time, but it's a chip that they've been researching for years and years. So I was, of course, thought Ghost in the Shell is here.
So
I love
yeah,
Ghost
that's
in the
what I was
Shell.
thinking.
Oh my
Ghost in the
gosh.
Shell.
My car is named Motoko, okay?
Oh, so cool.
Ooh.
I think that kind of technology, brain-computer interfaces, I definitely am inspired by it. I think there's so much Neuralink. Yeah, Neuralink. I know, I remember hearing that he was doing some experiments on
Yeah,
some
okay, yeah, it's coming back.
before. I think I think it's promising, not necessarily because it's him, because don't get me started, but the technology and the idea as a whole, yes, I'm very interested in what we can do there for people. But I am hesitant because then you just have to consider, I mean, there's just so many concerns, right? But I think it's promising. I think as long as the core value remains to help people and to remain ethical while you're helping them, why not?
I think you speaking from a medical's perspective, just the applications for gaming that already exist to help people with all kinds of mental health disabilities, neurological disabilities, musculoskeletal disabilities, so on and so forth, right? I mean, this is the next level of accessibility. I mean, this is going to be a lot of push for this, guarantee, a lot of investment, a lot of eyes are going to be on it. The medical community is going to jump on this. Everybody's going to be there. I totally see that happening.
Well, have you seen, you've probably seen them because she's been doing a lot, but there's a woman, she games using electrodes and no hands on the controller. She's able to game. Have you seen that?
I've heard of people doing that, but I've not the specific person that you're referring to.
So it's you can hands-free play games using just your brainwaves. In one of my past lives, I worked at a behavioral health clinic, and we were had just begun using like virtual reality games to supplement clinical treatment for patients. But we were also invested in biofeedback, neuro biofeedback, and using EEGs and electrodes, place them all over the head. And the goal of this exercise is to kind of help improve a person, let's say if they have ADHD, by helping them maintain a specific brain state. And that's usually visualized by this wave pattern on the screen in front of you. So being as still as you possibly can, trying to like concentrate and find the right mix of concentration and focus to like make the wave stable or whatnot. But there's also games that you can pair with that exercise. So there's games where it's like, okay, you have to, if you're able to achieve that ideal brain state, then you are able to control your character moving around and doing stuff. So I got to see that firsthand and do it myself, and it's so cool. It's very exciting. I really am interested in the application of games as medicine, which I've been seeing a lot of, with games getting cleared by the FDA to be used as medication, as treatment for ADHD, among other things. I think it's very promising. Yeah.
Ken
So
showing off his
yeah, so check it out. So me and my partner, she created advanced performance hypnosis, and I joined her to add in science behind it. So we've been using Muse for about 8 months to track the brainwave data during the hypnotherapy sessions, and we have concluded we're pretty certain how we can get someone into a certain brain state and what frequencies and at what power levels we get those frequencies that actually creates lasting change in that person while they're in a super relaxed subconscious open state. And like I Bilal is absolutely right. I think like 10 years, there's going to be nothing but this. Like it's going to be challenges, you metrics, gamifying, mental health, and everything. And the last thing I wanted to add is, so I talk about my dad a lot. He doesn't super appreciate it, but he's 75. And I will tell you, the barrier to playing games is unbelievably high. I mean, it took us weeks to get him even an account, because like, it's hard for the hands, and you get this OTP, two-factor authentication. I mean, it was a massive pain in the ass for someone who's older and is not familiar with the toggles and the but anyway. But he's playing Rocket League with my 7-year-old, and I will tell you, like, he's like, are there more games than just this on this Xbox? And I was like, yeah, Dad. So we walked him through the store, and he downloaded like 70 games, and they're like brain games and all this stuff. And like he actually like scored the other day, like scored, and he looks forward now to like, hey, do you think I can play with my grandson today? And I'm like, yeah, Bilal's gonna love this. But his brain connection, I mean, there's like serious improvement, like amazing. So I just, one personal anecdote on that. Pretty awesome.
Amazing. Joe Dispenza is someone who I read. I don't know if you're familiar with his work, but he does some fantastic studies on getting into an alpha state, on finding the right frequency that impacts your emotional stability, and even to the point of finding a way to heal in a healing your quantum field and healing your physical body from that front. So Ken and Bilal, we always talk about flow state and peak performance and how do we get there and how do we use gaming to get us there. So I'm really thrilled to hear that you've got background in VR. And then, but my question for you would be, what do you think the future is going to bring for gaming? Right? Where do you think we're going?
Mm, big question. I've been thinking about this actually since the last GDC. I went to a roundtable for narrative design specifically. It was like, what's the future of narrative design was one of the questions. But it's just been turning in my head ever since, because with the background that I have, spanning the military, spanning defense, spanning games, mental health. Um, I've seen different applications for this technology across those industries. And with the advent, or like I would say, the super wide access that the common man now has to AI, I think the future of gaming is getting closer and closer to this idea of people being able to create their own circumstances. And what I mean by that is, I personally believe that our technology is not going to stop. We're only going to keep becoming more immersed with our technology, more enmeshed with it, and that augmented reality is going to be used more and more and more. And then virtual reality, it might start kind of where games started, which is just, oh, I'm just going to escape and have fun and do this, but it's becoming its own real ecosystem where people will live. There will be digital inhabitants. And in order to make that feel real and immersive, the use of technologies like AI to be able to generate the circumstances that you want, that fits the context you're creating. Personally, I just see the tech becoming more enmeshed with our lives. So what we're doing in the games industry is going to have far-reaching implications as other industries start paying attention to what's being done, how things are being developed. Especially when you look at gamification, that's kind of coming through in a lot of industries. And it's kind of sad to say, but there's always like this dark side of how do we use gamification in games to make more money? And the people who, I mean, making money is a thing. So I feel like investing in games and gaming tech is going to be a thing too. But I just see it as a part of our lives, and not just for recreation, for everything. We're learning, we're going to work in here. We are getting our healthcare in these worlds. Like it's becoming more and more enmeshed. So it's an exciting time. It feels like we're kind of in the wild, wild west, right? Like we're on the edge of possibility. Anything and everything can be thought of in this moment, especially when it comes to the bounds of combining games and gaming tech with medicine. There's so many things to explore there. So if you have an idea, now is the time to start ideating, start creating, and just get in there.
That's right. All right. So as we hand back some of your time back to your life, there are going to be so many things that people are going to want to ask you and follow up. And I'm sure that Blizzard is a receptive organization to folks who may be interested in working with them or for them. You know, the collaborative atmosphere sounds amazing, especially coming from the military when we're more combative than collaborative. So that must be very refreshing. But is there any parting words of advice to some folks, you know, from your own experiences? And then I'll go around the room to Bilal, April, for final questions and comments.
Absolutely. So first of all, if you want to reach out, if you want to ask me anything or talk to me, feel free. I think my LinkedIn is shared. Additionally, the cool thing about Blizzard is there's this big veterans employee resource group. And we also have specifically, ABK has military talent sourcers that focus on the veteran population. So if you're interested also, I could probably give you some contacts there. But it's a very veteran supportive company. And then the other thing is to just follow what excites you, follow your passion. Don't feel like you're tied to one thing, and just embrace the opportunity to learn something new and to apply your skills in a different way. What's helped me a lot is the kindness of others who have been willing to talk to me online, through LinkedIn, whatever. So I would say utilize the people who are doing the job that you want to do. It never hurts to ask.
Cool. Thank you for that. All right, Bilal, do it.
Got nothing. Keep doing what you're doing. Maybe one day I'll be right there with you. But until then, keep trucking along.
He's not speechless often. I don't think I've ever seen that. So that's good. That's good.
Yeah.
All right. April, I know she got it.
I always have. I'm so grateful that you came. Everything you said hits right where we're at. You know, we're doing a mental health program. We're doing a bunch of things. We're launching a new VR academy at school to figure out a way to get people training and get people learning that the next wave is here. I'm so excited about the work you're doing with the youth. And I was wondering if there's a quote or a piece of advice for young people, for high school kids or people that you are interested in your industry, interested in you, interested in linguistics. You've got so much. It's just fantastic. What would you tell someone at a transition point in their life, trying to figure out where to go, what to do?
I have so much to say. I want to support the youngins so much. What I would say first and foremost is take advantage of your time and your youth. You have a lot of time and you're not expected to know everything. So take advantage of that. But also use it as a time to get to know yourself. Maybe just taking the time to make a big list of all the things that you like to do, things that are important to you, people who are important to you. Just start making this big old list. And then over time, figuring out what you really value in life and what makes your life better. Because in my experience, if you start to center your life around your values and what pours into you and fills you up and inspires you and excites you, then doors open. And I would say following that is something, it's a skill you should learn earlier on than not.
That's amazing. It's actually
Yeah.
really good advice. I gave a presentation. I said that on Saturday, and it's like the greatest people in the world, like that little nag, like they actually follow that nag. And it looks like it's very clear that you did. And the world is a better place for that because the world needs more happy, joyful human beings spreading all that to everyone else, especially in user experience. Because I tell you what, the most frustrating thing in my life is user experience, especially government created interfaces. So
Oh, yeah.
Ooh, ooh.
thank you. Thank you for what you do, make things not so frustrating. So thank you so much. And Warrior Gamer out. I'm going to stop the recording. But I
Warrior
wanna
Gamer
continue.
Headquarters Podcast. Out.